Welcome everyone to tonight's Dharma Talk at Mountain Cloud. There's a wild wind blowing in Santa Fe, and here we are. So good to be here together as Sangha, acknowledging and embodying the interconnectedness that supports our practice and sustains our lives. You cannot be you without every person, every sentient being, each and everything being just as it is. Sort of kaleidoscope or a single web, and each bit of it distinct. Thich Nhat Hanh called this thoroughgoing, dynamic oneness interbeing. We enter our Sangha in the widest sense, and Sangha here in this distinct manifestation. Each one, all of us. Earlier this week, a newsletter I subscribed to arrived in my email, and it began with a poem. The author is James Cruz, an American poet who's also known for anthologies of poetry he's published over the years, collected verse around themes like kindness, compassion, love, peace, and wonder. This week's poem is called Try Softer. The title alone is an invitation to take the backward step. That instruction from of old. How often in our culture and in our heads we hear the prod, try harder, do more, be better, ramp it up. This phrase, try softer, brought back a memory that had long ago receded. I haven't thought of this in years. But when I was growing up, really from childhood on, I developed a habit of responding to almost any challenge with the words, I'm trying. A defense, a reassurance. It became a noticeable refrain. And then sometime in early adulthood, I noticed the habit and the contraction that came with it. At some point, I can't remember when, but I made a conscious decision to stop. And something shifted. Just meeting the situation at hand as it is. What a wonder then to find this practice fall into its lap and plant deep the invitation to come home again and again to this moment. Ordinary and complete. So here is the poem, Cruz's poem. Try softer. Honor wherever you are, whether the door to your life has blown off its hinges, or you find the simplest joy sitting in a patch of winter sun on that corner of the carpet where you love to stretch. Try softer, not harder, giving yourself a safe place to land your attention, resting in this threshold moment through which wind and snow and light all enter alike. This threshold moment. When we meet it, everything is there. We speak of realization, but it realizes you. Might that turn be what happens when we wake up to who we truly are? When the separate self falls away and the 10,000 things come rushing in. Your whole body, one. And as this tradition names it, gone. This past weekend, I heard a talk by Zhang Ji, her given name Anita Feng. She's the guiding teacher at the Albuquerque Zen Center now. And she gave this talk, a Dharma talk, on poetry and koans. Zhang Ji herself is a poet and a koan teacher. Her talk began with an appreciation for the capacity of poetry and koans to bring us to don't know mind. Or, as Dogen called it, the mind of before knowing. Before knowing. Good poetry, she said, cuts through the overused mind road and gives us something startling and alive. To meet it, she said, requires curiosity and courage. Then she turned to koans, also a different kind of language. Zhangji described koans as tools of awakening, like acupuncture for the mind, hitting very precise points. Koans, she said, provide just the right amount of poison to counteract a much bigger poison problem. Don't we know? She acknowledged that words are a big problem for our world. But words, just the right amount, can act, her language now, like a vaccine to counteract this pandemic we live in. A pandemic much more insidious than COVID. Practice. Practice is a kind of partaking of this word vaccine or poison. She said, the invitation is to make it original. We ourselves are naturally original. Original face. Or, as another teacher put it, original spontaneity. Naturally so. It's what this is. So what is this? What is this? Just the right amount of words. So now I'd like to turn to a koan that reduces, distills everything I've said, all these words, everything ever said, actually, to one word. One, you could say, over zero, that fraction. One and intimate, infinite. So this is case 18 from that collection, the Mumonkan, our Gateless Gate, and it's called Tozan's Masagin. It's very short. Here's the case. A monk asked Master Tozan in all earnestness, "What is Buddha?" Tozan said, "Masagin," or 3 pounds of flax. This is a very famous koan. It also appears in the Blue Cliff Record, or Hekigan Roku, their case 12. The master, in this case, is Tozan Shusho, a Dharma successor of Unman, so 10th century. It's not the same Tozan or Dongshan that we know of more readily from so many koans. That's Tozan Ryokai, Tozan Shuso here. And in this case, we don't know so much about Tozan's teaching. It hasn't come down, it hasn't been preserved. But there is one case that stands in a way for all of it, just resounds. It's a record of Tozan's awakening, his enlightenment, that comes to us now in the form of a koan. That's case 15 in the Mumonkan. And here's just a bit of it. In that scene, the scene of Tozan's turning moment, his falling open, he's been on pilgrimage. And he comes finally to Unman, or Yunmin, meeting for the first time. Unman greets him with a traditional opening question. We've heard it over and over, this checking question. Almost without fail, the monks fail to see it. They fail, I guess, on our behalf. The question is, where do you come from? Is Unman asking about geography? Where do you come from? Or fundamental reality? Where do you come from? Are there two? So Tozan answers from Sado. What's that? What's going on there? Could be a perfect answer. Or I was putting this together earlier today, and what came up was Mumon's, this line from Mumon's verse in case 1 to Joshu's dog, to Mu. Mumon writes, the perfect manifestation, the absolute command from Sado. But Unman presses him. Where were you during the summer retreat? Their exchange unfolds with Tozan responding again and again as if they were talking about his whereabouts, the sort of record of his activity. Where were you? When did you leave there? And then finally, Unman cuts to the chase. I spare you 60 blows. It's as if they're in different worlds, speaking different languages. But Unman's words are like an arrow. And Tozan is struck by great doubt. He wrestles through the night, and the next day goes back to Unman. Yesterday, Master, you spared me 60 blows, though I deserved them. I beg you, sir, where was I at fault? Commentators speculate that it might have been more encouraging to actually receive those blows. You're worth it. I'm trying. What did I do wrong? So seeing how ripe Tozan is, Unman launches a second arrow, now part of our inheritance. Oh, you rice bag! Have you been wandering about like that? Now west of the river, now south of the lake. Where is there to go? And the koan ends, at this, Tozan had great realization. Oh, you rice bag. What wandering have you been doing? Where is there to go? So what did he realize? What experience led Tozan later to say it all in one word, one exclamation? Where he's from, where he's been, all the travel, all the work, all the practice. What is Buddha? What is awakening? What am I? Masagin. 3 pounds of flax. Some commentaries speculate that Tozan may have been measuring flax when the monk asked his fundamental question. An ordinary activity. But that's not the point. Masagin. 3 pounds of flax. What's happening in that sound? Mumonkan says it juts forth. One word, one syllable swallows everything. And at the same time, whole world comes forth. Here's where I was. Here's where I'm going. Here's how I am going. Masagin. He could have said, hello. Or, I'm anxious about our country. Or, how is your practice? This Masagin bears the power of mu, the power of words that go beyond words, the power of this moment. What is this? In her talk, Zhangji referenced William Carlos Williams, who said, we find the truth not in ideas, but in the momentary. A nice saying, a pointer. We so often hear that Zen is interested in things. And then Carlos Williams wrote this poem. It's called The Red Wheelbarrow. Just a few lines. I hadn't heard this in so long. See how it lands. So much depends on a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So much depends on 3 pounds of flax. Masakin. Perfect manifestation. Absolute command. Standing alone in the whole universe. And everything depends on it. In the course of her talk, Zhangji quoted another verse by Mumonkan. This one's in his preface to the Mumonkan. And she just noted the multivalence of the language, how these words can mean in multiple ways, particularly the Chinese language she was appreciating. So here is Yamada Konroshi's translation of that introductory verse by Mumonkan. The great way has no gate. There are 1,000 different paths. If you pass through this barrier once, you will walk independently in the universe. You will wander alone in the universe, another version. This one body. And then Zhangji pointed out another common rendering of this last line. You will wander the whole universe in a single stride. Oh, it just brought up so strongly something someone shared with me after running on this mountain, running in the midst of practice, these long strides and not a bit of ground covered, no distance. Masagin. Realize this and you walk alone in the whole universe. A single stride, no distance traveled. One step here to the moon. I remember saying that to my teacher, to Ruben, once. I don't need a ride home. One step and I'm on the moon. He said, get a ride. But your step actually is the moon. In the Blue Cliff record, Hekigan Roku, this case, this Masakin, begins with an instruction by Master Engo. I'd like to share it, but don't worry about it. Just sort of let this wash over you. Engo writes, this is leading into this case about Masakin. The sword that kills, the sword that gives life, this has been the standard rule since of old and is the pivotal point of today. If you talk about killing, you don't harm even a single hair. If you talk about giving life, you lose your body and life. Therefore it is said, the supreme one way can't be transmitted even by the 1,000 holy ones. Practitioners who labor for forms or words are like monkeys trying to grasp reflections. Just tell me, if it can't be transmitted, why are there so many entangling koans? Those who have an eye to see, writes Senko, let them see. So many words, a caution, but just the right amount of words may cut to the root of our concepts, cut through the grid of our delusions, sever the well-guarded habit of I, me, mine, that life-giving cut, the flight of a bird, windstorm, masaki. There's a line from the fourth Chinese ancestor that this called up. He said, let the mind together with its world be quietened down to a perfect state of tranquility. Let thought be cast in the mystery of quietude. Centuries later, Koan Roshi offered an analogy for what it's like to have any one experience cast into that quietude, that mystery of quietude. So Koan Roshi offers us something like a cipher of the process that can nudge or startle or unleash us to realize what is already here. Here from the start. He said, it's from one of his talks, as we know from science, crystals are formed by first dissolving sufficient material into a liquid to form a supersaturated solution. If left in that state, nothing happens. We get saturated in this silence. Koan Roshi goes on, to have crystals form, the beaker with the solution in it must be tapped lightly to jar the solution. This silence of our sitting, and then one sound, one sensation, even a thought, like that tap. This threshold moment, Cruz called it. So how will it be tapped? Lightly. This moment, tapping you. Suddenly thought of one of the Buddha's first teachings. Stop and see. Again, Engo's introduction. If you talk about killing, you don't harm even a single hair. If you talk about giving life, you lose your body and life. It sounds convoluted, but really it's a simple invitation to let Tozan's teaching fall on you. Let Masagin fall like a sword that cuts through any separation. That sword that cuts the two into one. how are we to do that? Try softer. Honor wherever you are, whether the door to your life has blown off its hinges, or you find the simplest joy sitting in a patch of winter sun on that corner of the carpet where you love to stretch. Try softer, not harder. Giving yourself a safe place to land your attention. Resting in this threshold moment through which wind, snow, and light all enter alike. What a wonder that everything enters, but the heart is never overcrowded. This one heart, yours. Thank you. Thank you for this practice.